What is going on, everybody? We're back. We're live. College football. Week 9. We're getting there, folks. We're getting there. It's like almost feeling like the end of the season. This is our last single-digit week. Flies by. But that means things are getting good. There's a lot of bye weeks this week. But, we still got a full slate. A few of the regular teams on the slate are out. Of course, we still got our Arkansas and our Iowa States teams that are on the slate every week for some reason, our Ohio States, etc. So we're here to break it down as always. Daily Bread Media. JD in the house here with my co-host Kevin. Kevin, how we doing?
Good, man. Looking forward to another strong week. We'll see what happens, but some good games on a slate. Not awful.
Yeah, it's an interesting slate. We'll talk about it. There's actually a lot of plays I like on the slate, so finding the right ones will be interesting. But I think we've kind of narrowed down our player pool a little bit. Of course, that can always change, right, with injury news and whatnot. But seems like we have a similar player pool this week, so I'm excited to talk about those guys and see if we can talk through it here live on camera. Yep. Other than that, Halloween's on Monday. Kevin, what's your costume?
I don't know. My daughter, I was trying to go as a Nebraska football player, but I think my daughter vetoed that one, so I'm not sure what's going to happen. What about you?
Wow. You were going to dress as Luke McCaffrey?
I tell you, they leave Lincoln and go on to much better things. So
yeah, he's balling out. That's really fun to see, actually.
Yeah,
I don't dress up for Halloween, so I haven't in a long time. Should I? Probably. I think I'm supposed to go to a party on Saturday at night because I don't think the night games are anything special this week, so I might actually leave the house on a Saturday. But I'm gonna figure out a probably at halftime of the noon games. I'll probably have to try to figure out a costume last second.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into it. Halloween weekend. First up, we got Arkansas versus Auburn. Arkansas, they've been on the slate plenty, so by now we kind of know the deal here, Kevin. So we should do less run through than usual, I would imagine. And then Auburn, I mean, yes, they are still playing football in Auburn, people. Mm-hmm. They are. You might not have noticed this year because not much is happening. There's been some funny stories. You got the quarterback running away from the police. Okay, that's been fun. He's been retweeting some stuff about his offensive line. That's been cool. Other than that, not really much to talk about. But there could be some good plays in this one, probably especially looking at the Arkansas side of things. 4-point favorites here in Jordan-Hare. Kevin, what are we thinking on Arkansas?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the same thing we think every week on Arkansas, right? It's KJ Jefferson and it's Rocket Sanders. That's what drives that offense. I mean, that they do everything for them. So Auburn is not a very good team against the run. So honestly, I think you can play both in the same lineup. I generally don't do a quarterback running back, but I certainly think you can here. So I will have some Jefferson. I will have a lot of Rocket. I play Rocket almost every week, and he doesn't seem to disappoint. And his price really doesn't move up. It moves up a little bit, but it just doesn't go anywhere. So I love Rocket.
Yeah, I mean, Rocket's getting the Purdue treatment where they just decide not to move his price. It doesn't make any sense. KJ, pretty much the same thing, man. I mean, I made Rocket the cover boy this week. Is he going to be in 100% of my lineups? No. Has he been in over 50% of my lineups? What seems like every single week, Kevin? I mean, yes, because why not? He's the SEC's leading rusher. He gets a fantastic workload. He's a good receiver. He's a beast in the end zone. He's the team's best player. This is an Arkansas team that's fighting in every single game. They have one of the most difficult schedules in the entire country. They finally had a bye week. And then they're coming against an Auburn team. I think they've given up 748 rushing yards in their last 2 games.
Yeah,
I mean, hey now. So it almost seems too good to be true. I don't think you have to play. I don't think you have to play him because of the. Here, I'm not even sharing my screen. Hold up. I don't think you have to play him because there's some other really good options that we'll talk about. But he's certainly a fantastic option. Other than that, I think KJ, you can play him as well. There's always the case that maybe Auburn loads the box because they know they absolutely can't stop anything in the run. And then maybe that coaching staff actually wakes up a little bit over there. Of course, that would require some coaching to happen. Not sure that's actually a thing in Auburn. They rank 103rd in rushing EPA, 107th in rushing success rate. That's not going to cut it. Auburn has been a top 10 rushing team for a while now. KJ is a big, impressive runner. I feel like I mention this every week with KJ. Always feels like he's under-owned. Had a nice 40-point burger against BYU, 40 burger. So I think that's fine. Matt Landers, I've been mentioning their wide receiver at 4.8. This guy's extremely fast. They've been trying to get him the ball. He's had 2 blow-up weeks. Can we expect a repeat of 35 points? Probably not, but it is Auburn. Okay. So yeah, are you worried at all that Auburn just loads the box because it's the obvious thing to do here against a pretty one-dimensional Arkansas team?
I don't think so, because I don't. They could do that and still not be able to stop him. I don't have any confidence in Auburn stopping Arkansas on the ground at all.
Yeah, I think if you're playing cash, Rocket Sanders is very, very difficult to get away from. All right, looking at the other side of things, now we have an Auburn. If you want some comebacks on the other side, they're playing an Arkansas defense that's been absolutely dreadful. 116th in EPA, 126th in explosiveness overall. They have 2 really good linebackers. That's about where the positives end. Can we play any Auburn Tigers here, Kevin?
Well, we know Auburn sucks, and every time I play him, he does nothing. But Tank had a really big week last week. I think he had 170 yards, 2 scores. Like you said, the Arkansas D is not good. So I certainly think you can play Tank. I don't really want anything with Ashford. I don't want anything with the receivers. So if I'm playing anybody, it's Tank. I just know he doesn't seem to do well when I play him, but the price is nice for the matchup.
Yeah, I mean, in tournaments, if you want to play a passing game against a terrible Arkansas secondary, you can. Arkansas is actually, after having those secondary woes earlier in the season, and they have a few guys who might come back. Miles Slusher sounds like he was practicing this week, and that's a very big name to know after the injuries they've had. All right, Jalen Catalon getting injured out for the year early in the season. And the replacements just have not been great. They moved 2 freshmen wide receivers over to the secondary is how bad that's been, but it sounds like they're getting a little more healthy. And then the rushing defense is terrible too. 125th in rushing EPA. How are you possibly bottom 6? It just makes no sense. 119th in rushing success rate. I think it could be a Tank week. I just know if I play Tank, he's going to do nothing because he usually does nothing. Okay. Yeah. Usually does nothing. When you go through the game log, they have played some pretty good defenses, man. Like Georgia, Missouri, Penn State, LSU. I think all these defenses have a better rush D than Arkansas. I think San Jose State actually has a very good defensive line. I think they have a better rush defense than Arkansas as well. So he's basically only had 2 good games. There's been 1 against Mercer, so who cares, and 1 against Ole Miss. So overall, at home, I would think Tank is an absolutely great price. That's the only Auburn player we're interested in, right, Kevin?
Yeah, and I mean, Vegas thinks they're going to score. I think the over-under is like 62.5, 63. Yeah. So there's going to be some points.
Yeah, hard to get away from that. I think Tank's a very good tournament play. All right, Oklahoma versus Iowa State. Oklahoma football. Whoa, it has not been pretty. The Brent Venables defense going to take some time to learn that one. 115th in EPA on the season. They've been bad against the rush. 112th. In both explosiveness and EPA. So giving up chunk yardage left and right. And they're bad against the pass as well. 107th. They've had a lot of coverages. How do we think we're feeling about this one? Because Iowa State does have a good defense. Oklahoma, pretty bad defense, pretty good offense. What are you looking at first here, Kevin?
Yeah, honestly, I don't know that I'll have any Oklahoma exposure. They're just too expensive for what they do. Gabriel's just not worth it. The only guy I actually don't mind, but it's more of a dart throw on Oklahoma, is the tight end Willis. He's 4K. He's been pretty good. He's actually their 2nd most targeted receiver behind Mims. So I kind of like him, but that's probably the only Oklahoma exposure I want. I just don't want to pay up for any of the other guys.
Oklahoma's been pretty simple for us, Kevin. We've been saying it since the very beginning, and we're still saying it. They're massively overpriced, right? We said it against UTEP. We're going to be saying it when it's week 13 and the playing whoever the hell they're playing in week 13, because it's not Texas, because they already had the rivalry game. Maybe it's Bedlam. It's probably Bedlam. I'm probably going to be saying the same thing. They're massively overpriced. So we know probably where it's going, right? Mims is perennially overpriced. Every single week he's overpriced. He's been overpriced in fantasy for about 2 years, season long or DFS. Do they have a good offense? Yes, but Iowa State's defense, man, I'm pretty sure they're legit. I'm pretty sure they're legit. They've had some tough matchups. They've aced them all, right? They held Texas really down when they played Texas. I agree with you. I think Willis at 4K. If I'm playing this one, I'm paying down. All right. On the other side of things, we have Iowa State in a game that's supposed to be competitive. Oklahoma favored by about 1.5 currently. Over-unders at 55.5. Expected to do a little bit of damage here, and they're priced very cheap against a terrible defense. Where are we looking, Kevin?
Well, I think we're both liking Deckers at 5.3. The price is just it's crazy. It's really a too low, right? So I think his passing prop is like 280 yards. So he should be good for 303. And at 5.3, I mean, it's a great play. And the beauty is you can stack him and Hutch and not break the bank, right? You can stack them easily and, still get basically whoever you want. So I think that's a really good stack this week.
Yeah. The quarterback's hard because I think there are a decent amount of quarterback plays I like. There's a few in every range. So it just decides how you want to construct your lineups. I think wide receivers probably where I'll be paying up this week. Yep. So it's really who I can fit in at the other slot. So even like if you pay up for Hutchinson, because he's one of the most targeted wide receivers in all of college football. He's extremely safe in cash. You can easily get to a Decker stack at 5.3K. He's probably not going to kill you. And while they did throw for 330 yards against Texas, I do have to point out, it wasn't too long ago they played a really bad Kansas defense, and he threw the ball 48 times, yet somehow managed 12 fantasy points. So I don't know about that, right? I really don't know about that. If you're getting 1/4 of your passing attempts and fantasy points, that doesn't make me feel all warm and fuzzy. I think they should run him more because the running back room's a total mess. So we'll mention the running back room. And Matt Campbell a few weeks ago mentioned they should go to that running game more. And then he's had back-to-back positive rushing totals since he mentioned that. And he's a big lefty. Did get a little dinged up running around last time, so maybe they'll hold him back. But overall, I think that's a good price, and I think Deckers is going to be heavily owned this week for a good reason. Looking at the running back room, it's a total mess. Jarrell Brock only had 2 carries. He's supposed to be very banged up. Sounds like he's probably going to play. Deion Silas got some run behind him. He's at 3.5K, which seems interesting, right, against a defense that's been pretty dreadful. The issue is you're probably going to have 3 guys get carries if Jarrell Brock is active, which it sounds like he probably will be this week. So stay tuned for news on that. And then Cartavius Norton, the true freshman, they're extremely high on, had 6 carries last week. Of course, it went for nowhere against Texas, but Texas has a much better defense than Oklahoma. They played each other, and Texas won by 49 points, folks. So overall, I think these running backs are really cheap. Are you giving any credence to this room, Kevin?
I'm probably not, just because I don't know where the carries are going to go. So I'm probably going to stay away. Just too much uncertainty for me.
A lot of uncertainty. The pay down options are really not great. I think there's like 2 I'm interested in that are below, 3.5K. So they're interesting. I definitely considered them heavily in a few builds, but I think you might as well just go to the min price guys we'll talk about later. There's 2 that are kind of obvious this week. All right, moving on. We have TCU playing West Virginia. This one looks like it's going to be due for some fantasy goodness here. The total is at 68.5 currently, so approaching 70. By now we know it is with TCU's offense, and they get a very juicy matchup against a West Virginia defense that I've already talking smack about West Virginia's defense plenty on this podcast. So let me repeat for you. They lost their top 5 secondary players from a year ago, and it shows on the field. Overall, TCU, they're priced pretty high, although the price on Kendre Miller, the running back, is just not changing at this point. So the algorithm really likes him at 6.3K. So that's where he will remain in perpetuity. Kevin, where's our attention on TCU?
I mean, you can play any of the big 3, right? Duggan at 8.5. You can certainly play Kendre Miller, as you said. The price is a joke, right? So he's obviously a really good play. And Q Johnson, I bash him. I'm not a huge fan, but the guy's a freak, and they're actually getting him involved. And yeah, I mean, I think he should have a big game. He actually he had a couple big games the weeks before, didn't have a huge game last week, but he was targeted a bunch. He had 3 or 4 deep ones that he didn't catch. So I expect him to have a pretty big game, and he's 7K. So, I mean, it's a good price against as you said, a terrible secondary with nobody in there. Who's going to cover him,
I think these guys are all fantastic plays, and it sounds crazy, Kevin, but in this scheme, Max Duggan's seeming like one of the safest
Yeah.
Plays around because he's in a Sonny Dykes offense, hucking the ball all over the yard, has a potential first rounder at wide receiver, runs the ball a ton, is built like a tank, is a great rushing, right, red zone threat. It seems like he's just the perfect fantasy quarterback right now. And that has me scared because we know Max Duggan's extremely erratic, but I really like Duggan in this matchup. I think he's my favorite pay up option, right? He's going to be up there with guys like Sam Hartman. Okay. Thank God Bo Nix is not on the slate, is he?
No.
Okay. Bo Nix. Woof. Thank God we don't have to make a Bo Nix decision. Okay. Thank God. Bo Nix making hard decisions and us making difficult decisions on Bo Nix, neither one ends well. So thank God we don't have to. But I think he's an absolutely fantastic play. I really love Quentin Johnston, as I have the last 3 weeks. Hopefully, I keep getting questions like DMs like, you're trusting Quentin Johnston? I'm like, are you guys not watching the games? This guy's an absolute monster. Did have some drop problems last week. Okay. So hopefully he shores that up. But this is a fantastic matchup. Okay. West Virginia. They rank 116th in EPA against the pass, 122nd in success rate. So best believe TCU is going to do some damage. And of course, Kendre Miller. I know West Virginia is better against the run, but TCU has ran the ball on everyone. They have a top 15 rushing offense in both moving the chains and in explosiveness. So Kendre Miller, I mean, I wrote paragraphs about this guy in the offseason. I love Kendre Miller. I think he's a very good talent. I think he's going to have a successful NFL season. I wish NFL career eventually. I wish they would use him more in the receiving game because I think he's a good receiver. He has a requisite size, has a requisite explosiveness, contact balance. You name it. You name it. I love Kendre Miller. I think he's the complete back. It's nice to see him finally getting more carries.
Yeah, 29 last week.
What's that?
29 last week.
29. I don't think it's going to happen every week, Kevin.
No.
But that was amazing to see. And of course, he got 33 fantasy points against a tough defense because if he gets 29 carries, they're going to score some touchdowns. I don't like TCU's secondary, guys. Okay, they don't target any of them, so I don't like them. Could they explode in tournaments? Sure, but throw the names in a hat. That's not how I like to play DFS unless I have to. All right, other side, West Virginia. Of course, we could have some run backs, but West Virginia hasn't been very good. I think they scored, 10 points last week in a blowout loss to Texas Tech. Holy Toledo. JT Daniels even got pulled at one point. I'm not sure if they said it was an injury or he's just bad or both, but what do we think on any run backs for West Virginia?
Yeah, I'm probably going to stay away from, I think JT Daniels stinks, but they have good receivers in Fort Wheaton and Prater. But honestly, I think the guy I'm going to run back with is their tight end, CJ Donaldson, right? So he's 5.2, and Mathis is out, so he should see a bunch of carries. And even though TCU is way better, obviously a much better team, they're only a 7-point favorite, and the line's like 67. So that's telling us that they're going to keep it close. Somehow West Virginia is going to stay relatively competitive in this one. So I think CJ is a really good price.
I think he is too. He's fantastic. Like him and Tank there in tournaments. I mean, these guys could blow up. They could also not, but I mean, TCU's defense is just okay. They're just okay, and they're looking to get in shootouts. Like Kansas State they played 3 quarterbacks last week. They still got to 28 points on TCU. They're in a game that's going to have, quick tempo back and forth. West Virginia is always better at home. I love watching West Virginia home games, except for the stupid camera angles. Terrible. Yeah, I love me some CJ. I think tournaments only, but with Tony Mathis out, this is already one of the thinnest running back rooms at the Power 5 level. I remember saying that before the offseason. Of course, West Virginia fans got mad on Twitter because everyone's mad on Twitter. You could say the sky is blue and people will get mad at you on Twitter. I said that the running back room's so thin that I think this true freshman tight end is going to get some carries in the backfield, and that was called crazy. But now here we are, and this true freshman, quote-unquote, tight end is looking like a fantastic tournament play. He's a monster. Other than that, the only other one I would look at, of course, you could play any of their wide receivers. They kind of operate a pseudo-air raid under Graham Harrell. Caden Prather is a monster. He's 6'4". He runs a 4.4. This kid's a burner. He gets plenty of targets. I think he has a very good price in a run back at 5'4". I think everyone will be off him last week. I will remind you that game was played in very, very, very heavy winds last week, so he should do better this week. All right, moving on to a game that I will happily not watch a single second of, Georgia Tech versus FSU. Are you interested in this game whatsoever for any reason, Kevin?
I will not have anyone from either team. There's just nothing there, right? It's just not. Yeah, there's no reason.
Jeff Sims in tournaments, Okay, I have something for playing Jeff Sims in tournaments because he's a stud athlete, but he's banged up. Not sure if he's going to play. Got pulled last week for Zach Gibson. That all has me not feeling great. I think Florida State's defense is a little overrated. They ranked 90th in success rate this season. That's pretty bad. On the other side, we have Florida State going against a Georgia Tech defense that, Kevin, my metrics are actually telling me Georgia Tech's defense is not bad. But they're going to be underdogs in this one. And Florida State's going to be expected to score some points here, right? So where are we looking at Florida State?
I don't know. I don't know where it's going to come from. Travis at 8.2 is just too expensive for me. And the receivers, there's no constant there. I'm not. I don't know. I'm probably not going to have anybody from Florida State either. I can't get there.
Yeah, I don't like it. They spread the ball out at wide receivers. I'm pretty much crossing this game off, to be totally honest with you. I think Travis is the best play, and he's way too expensive. The total's at 47.5, so don't really need to be interested in that one. All right, moving on. Another offensive explosion here is expected. Notre Dame is playing Syracuse. Syracuse is favored by 2.5 points. Had a great game against Clemson. Ultimately fell short last week. Total in this one, same as the last one, 47.5. Notre Dame, what it boils down to is pretty much if you're going to play the tight end or not, possibly the running game. So regale me, Kevin. Where should we look?
Yeah, I mean that's it, right? So for Notre Dame, it's Michael Mayer, baby Gronk. That's their offense, right? So he gets peppered with targets. His price really doesn't move either. He stays in that 5.3, 5.6. He just doesn't move. So obviously he's a really good play. He's probably going to be pretty highly owned. So take that for what it's worth as far as tournaments go. Another guy that has probably the only other guy I have any interest on Notre Dame is Diggs, the running back at 3.9. He had like 28 carries last week. So maybe he's asserting himself, as the lead back for Notre Dame. But, I'm not positive on that. But at 3.9, I think he's worth a shot as a running back or a flex. So they're probably the only two places I would have any interest on Notre Dame.
Yeah, certainly. I don't think I'm personally going to get to Meyer much this week. Of course, his price just isn't really changing, and he's one of the most heavily targeted players on the slate. So, of course, you can play him. Of course, he's fine. I just think the offense is terrible. I think Syracuse has a genuinely good defense. They grade out very well in all my metrics. They're near a top 10 defense. Okay. I think they're very good at disguising their coverages. Their pass coverages really confuse quarterbacks. We've seen that over and over. So I could see a couple balls intended for Meyer being picked off in this one. I think he's a fine play, but not really banging the table for him. I think he was the easiest play on the slate last week. I do not think that at all this week, although he is fine. The running back room is worth some discussion here. I thought before the season Logan Diggs was going to lead the team in rushing and felt pretty good about that take. Then he gets injured. It sounds like he's going to miss a few weeks to begin the season. Then it comes out there's just a lot of bad press about him and wearing USC jerseys and just some stuff about his personality that who knows. It's all talk, right? It's all narrative. And then the season rolls along and he's playing week 1 when he was supposed to be out for a few weeks. So he's tough and the staff likes him and they want to get him on the field. He's gradually received more and more work as the season has gone on. And this is interesting because Syracuse does not have a good rushing defense. They rank 75th in rush defense per PFF's metrics. They rank 114th in rushing success rate. And Logan Diggs had 28 carries last week. Yes, it's a bad offense. Yes, they haven't been able to punch the ball in the red zone. But Logan Diggs is looking like he's pulling away. Audric Estime was assumed to be the lead back heading into last week, and I believe he had 3 carries. So do not play him. Do not play Tyree. I think Logan Diggs at 3.9K in a slate that does not have many paydown options. I certainly think he's one of them. All right, looking over at Syracuse, we have some pretty low prices here. Some very low prices. I know it's a low total as well, but there's some options we're going to have to parse through here, Kevin. So where are we looking at Syracuse?
Yeah, I think I'm going to have some Schrader, 5.9. I think he's certainly worth that price. Again, he doesn't really move in price either. He stays 5.9, 6.2, kind of in that range. He's not a very good passer, as we know, right? But Notre Dame isn't stupendous defensively, and he targets Gadsden a lot, so you could do worse than having that stack. The good thing about Schrader is, from a fantasy perspective, is he's a great runner, right? He's very good with his legs, and could easily have 70, 80 yards rushing and 2 scores in this one. So that's where he makes up for his, lack of passing skill. But 5.9, I think he's a really good price. I like Gadsden at 6.1. And if I'm going to play them, if I'm playing Schrader, I'm playing Gadsden. I'm going to stack him. I'm not going to play him naked. Probably not, probably. Oh, Bo Nix is on a slate.
Wonderful.
Yeah, great.
I'm not playing him.
I will not probably play Tucker. He's just a little too expensive for me with some of the other options at running back at a much lower price. I like his talent. I like him. I think he's a good player, but I'm probably not going to pay $7K for him.
Yeah, I like it. I think Schrader is going to be one of my most difficult decisions. I think if we're keeping it simple, he's 5.9K for a Robert Anae offense that's going to operate at tempo. They're going to throw the ball, and he's going to rush the ball more than just about any other quarterback in the country, thus giving him a pretty safe floor. The worst fantasy points he's had this year has been 17. They have played some pretty tough defenses lately, too. Ever since the UConn game where he blew up, right? Purdue, that's an okay defense. Virginia's actually been playing solid defense. NC State, Clemson are both very tough defenses. So Notre Dame defense, I think, is pretty much in the same group, right? I think they're pretty comparable to, I don't know, maybe NC State. So I think Schrader is a fantastic play. It makes me feel a little icky because the Schrader Gadsden stack is extremely easy to go to. He's pretty much the only one getting targeted in this offense, right? They only gave Sean Tucker 5 carries last week, their star running back. Dino Babers said it's been addressed internally, which I don't know what that means regarding his lack of usage last week in Clemson. And the overall thing is if you're staring down one guy and he's a tall red zone threat, that makes it extremely interesting regardless of the matchup. So Notre Dame's defense, while they are good, they do rank 70th in PFF's coverage metric, and they are 104th in a passing explosiveness. So that's not good. Gadsden has 22 targets in his last 3 weeks. He's the only option in the passing game. Him and Tucker are the two most targeted guys this week. Two most targeted guys on the team. I would have to think if Schrader, who's not a great quarterback, and he's sitting there staring down Gadsden all game long, a Notre Dame team that hasn't been getting any turnovers all year, I already tell you there's probably one coming here on a very wobbly Schrader duck he's going to throw. But the fact of the matter is we don't care about if he's throwing ducks if he's that cheap and he runs a lot. So overall, I think Schrader is definitely my favorite play on the team. Gadsden, I will have some. I think you might as well stack him with Schrader if you're playing him. Overall, I think there's some fantastic wide receivers. I wouldn't call Gadsden fantastic, but he is absolutely viable on the slate. All right, turn it over. We have Ohio State versus Penn State. Ohio State. The question is always when they're on the slate, are we going to stack Ohio State? What do you think, Kevin?
Yeah, I'm stacking them. I think, Stroud had a subpar game last week against actually a really good Iowa D, and he still threw for 290 and 4. And that was with a Smith and Jigba that they said is on a pitch count. I'm going to call bullshit on that one. So I watched that whole game, and he definitely pulled up lame and then didn't play the rest of the game, but then he was on a pitch count. It's just, he's hurt. The dude's hurt, which I think is good actually from a fantasy perspective, because that just means he hammers Harrison and Ibuka, right? So I think you can absolutely do the, stack both of those guys with Stroud, because we have some pay down options that'll get you there. They didn't run the ball real well last week, so I'd expect maybe they run a little more this week. But again, who's it going to be? Meatball, Travion, nobody I want to pay any money for. So they're gonna score 45 points, right? So you have to have some exposure to Stroud and the receivers, because his floor is 303, right? That's his floor to me anyway. So you got to have some exposure.
Yeah, I think you put that well. Obviously, Penn State, the defense, what's going to come into mind is how everyone's thinking they're a top 5, top 10 rush defense. And then they play against Michigan, and they give up 400 yards rushing. So if you face a good rushing offense and you give up that many yards, of course, we're not going to have any faith in you the rest of the year if you play another good team. And Ohio State is a pretty decent team, Kevin. I would say that. Last week, they were better against the rush, although Minnesota still had 165 yards. That was only on 3.6 yards per carry. But they were on their backup quarterback in that game and were doing absolutely nothing but running the ball. So safe to say Ohio State's offense is a little bit more dynamic than the Minnesota Golden Gophers is. Other than that, the Jackson Smith and Jigba thing, it does worry me a little bit in the passing game. We know these guys are going to go off. It just makes it a little bit more of a dice roll. He only ran 13 pass routes, and 100% of them were from the slot. So we did see that some of that slot roll, it cut into Egbuka and Fleming snaps. Fleming already was not receiving a full workload. It was Egbuka and Harrison is the clear two. Last week, Marvin Harrison Jr. at 7.4K, who has the most tournament upside, I think, of any of these players every week, already has 10 receiving touchdowns this season. He ran 33 snaps. Egbuka had 25, and Fleming only had 20, whereas JSN, as I said, had 13. So overall, I still think Egbuka's fine. You don't need to run 100% of snaps in this Ohio State offense that's going to score 40 points pretty much every single week to be a good play. And DraftKings, for some reason, refuses to raise his price, even though he gets 20 points each and every single week, unless they're playing Rutgers elite defense. All right, Penn State. Ohio State's defense has been really good, Kevin. Penn State's priced very low, though. Is there anything? Well, some of these guys are low. Sean Clifford certainly isn't. Anything we can look at Penn State?
I may get there on Parker Washington, but I'm also a bit of a homer with Parker Washington just because I think he's a really good player, and I really liked him coming into the season. Hasn't done much, but he does have Sean Clifford throwing him the football. So, but I think this is a game where obviously they're going to be in the trail position, so I think they're going to have to throw pretty often. And I think Parker Washington can make some plays. He's a little expensive at 6K, but if I have any Penn State action, it's probably going to be Parker.
Yeah, I'm not enthused about playing them. I think Ohio State's defense is genuinely good.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on. Rutgers versus Minnesota. Holy moly. Rutgers and Minnesota. What a barn burner. Total in this one is 40.5, barely cracking 40. Minnesota's favored by 13.5, 14 in some spots. I mean, okay, I guess Rutgers doesn't have an offense, but that seems pretty high to me in a very low scoring game. So probably going to be on the Rutgers side, which feels pretty gross. Rutgers, what's the play here, Kevin?
It's the only play there is, right? So it's the pay down option you were talking about earlier, Mr. Samuel Brown. He gets carries. He's their lead back. He had 19 carries last week, and he's flat min price. So certainly worth a shot.
Oh, yeah. Like volume at 3K, 15 carries at least in each of his last 3 games, 28 in his last game as a freshman. I like me some Sam Brown, man. Holy Toledo. I know he doesn't have probably the most upside you'd like to see. So of course, he only had 63 yards a couple weeks ago against Nebraska on that Friday night slate. But he was min priced in that one too. 8 points at min price. It's not going to kill you. Minnesota's rush defense, I don't think they're very good. Like neither team's going to throw the ball here. Minnesota's rush defense, I mean, this is a team that everybody loved. The metrics all loved them earlier in the season, and they're just not all that great. Last 2 weeks, they gave up 220 rushing yards to Illinois, 175 to Penn State. That's like not very good either time, but not terrible. Before that, they gave up 160 yards and 2 touchdowns to Purdue. And Purdue has been better rushing the ball this year, but they're certainly not a good rushing team. Even Colorado ran for 136 yards on them. So if Colorado can run for 136 yards on this team, I think Samuel Brown, who, yes, signed the Constitution and is also breaking out as a true freshman. So that's pretty cool. Samuel Brown the fourth. I think he can get you there this week because that's a ridiculous price. All right, Minnesota stacks. Tell me all about the Minnesota stack, Kevin.
Yeah. Honestly, this is a little weird with Minnesota for me this week, right? So Mo Ibrahim is always 9K. He's 9K, 8.9, 9.2. He's just up there, right? This week they bumped him down. The algorithm bumped him down to 7.3, his lowest price all year. And everyone's going to look at it and say, oh my God, they're playing Rutgers. Rutgers sucks. Got to play Mo. Rutgers rush team is really good. So I'm probably not going to play much Mo. I think he's going to be really popular, and I think he's going to disappoint. I'm
not going to play much Mo either. He's 7.3K. He gets as much workload as anyone in the country is going to get. Had 30 carries his last game. I mean, Rutgers defense, they just have a good game plan defensively. They know Minnesota can't do anything offensively. They know their quarterback's out. They know the backup quarterback didn't do anything. They know Minnesota's top wide receiver is out for the season as well. This is a one-dimensional offense, and one-dimensional offenses, it's not always as black and white as they're going to give him the ball, so he's going to do well. Well, they could give him the ball and score 6 points, okay? And of course, that could be said for both teams. But Rutgers defense is better than Minnesota's by quite a bit, I actually believe. And okay, Minnesota's playing at home, and in college football, sometimes the home team just wins, even if they're the worst team, right? So 7.3 elite workload. I'm not really going to talk you off of it, but I personally will not be playing him in my lineups. You know who else I'm not going to be playing in my lineups, Kevin? Any Florida guys. I think the only one we can consider is Anthony Richardson because, he could run for an 80-yard touchdown at any point against any team, but they're playing Florida. Yikes. What do we think here?
Yeah, I'm not playing any Gators against Georgia. Obviously, Richardson, as you said, has the upside with his legs, but he's really not a good passer. He kind of proves that every week. And the system, the Napier system just doesn't. It's not fantasy friendly. It really isn't, especially for quarterbacks, right? So I'm not playing him against Georgia. He's just, I'm not dealing with it.
Well said. I think it was last year the Anthony Richardson hype was happening. And he was like a part-time player. And then they played Georgia. And, might have even been some negative fantasy points scored. All right. Georgia. I mean, it's Georgia. It's their offense. They're going to run the ball. Florida's defense is, I don't know if god-awful is too strong of a word, but really bad, man. Bottom 10 in success rate for an SEC team. That's really nice to see for Billy Napier and his squad. Really nice to see that in his first year on campus. They were supposed to be bad this year, and boy, are they bad. Really bad against the rush especially, but, not good at anything isn't really something you want to hear if you're a Florida fan, but there you go. Georgia's probably going to score here, Kevin. What are we thinking?
They are, but I just can't. I can never pay that price for Stetson Bennett ever. He's always way too highly priced. I just can't pay that. And I don't like paying for Bowers because he's a guy I never get right. When I try to play Bowers, he does nothing. When I don't play him, he has 75 yards rushing and 2 scores rushing. Right, so I don't get him right. Honestly, I don't know that I'll have much interest. The only guy I would have an interest as a punt play at running back is Dewan Edwards, and that's nothing special. He gets 10, 12 carries a game. He had a blow-up game a couple weeks ago. So maybe get there as a punt, but I think Milton's still out, right?
I haven't seen any definitive news this week. He was out last week.
Yeah, I don't. So probably not. Probably won't really have much Georgia interest.
Yeah, I think those pay down guys are interesting. Dewan Edwards, yeah, you can play Dewan Edwards. This Florida rush D, like I said, really, really bad. 108th in success rate against the rush. Even Branson Robinson, the freshman, if Kendall Milton is indeed out, and I'm not playing Kendall Milton, I don't think he's good. No. Branson Robinson, he might get 8 to 12 carries here. He's an impressive big freshman running back who could stumble into a touchdown at MINN price. It's not inconceivable he would outscore Samuel Brown the fourth. Will not sign the Constitution, though. I did not see a Branson Robinson in the Constitution. I think I might have seen a signature somewhere around the Book of Mormon, but not the Constitution. Okay. Other than that, Georgia, it's an ugly offense. Brock Bowers, I'm probably not going to play him this week. You can always play him in tournaments if you're playing large fields and multi-entering. I actually do think he's going to have a pretty good game this week. I just think the scores have been depressed against bad teams. Florida, I don't know if I call them a bad team. They're not good, but this is a rivalry game. I think Brock Bowers is going to have a few good weeks with this game and then the Tennessee one on deck. I do think next week could be the blowout for him. But, yeah, I'm going to play his over 12.5 fantasy points on Prize Picks. This is a guy who's averaging around 15.5, right, in his short, illustrious career. And I just think we're getting a discounted price against a bad defense in a rivalry game. So I'm going to take that over all day long. Doesn't mean I'm stuffing him into lineups. I just think it's just a bad price. All right, we've gotten to that point of the show. Bo Nix, 9.4K. Okay, the best college fantasy quarterback the nation has seen since Bailey Zappi, New England quarterback Bailey Zappi. not the one who kicks people in the nuts or twists their ankles. The other one, the cool one, the rookie. Bo Nix, Kevin, he's playing Cal. He's playing at Cal. Cal's defense is not good. They have a reputation for being good. They're actually not good, but they do have a way of muddying up the game, slowing it down, depressing fantasy points. But this is a team that lost to Colorado, playing an Oregon team that's on an absolute heater, has won 6 straight since the loss against Georgia, is looking like the Pac-12 favorites. So Oregon is supposed to roll. Can we play Bo Nix all the way up at 9.4K? Can we play any of these other guys? What are we thinking?
I can't play Bo at that price. I mean, he's good. He's better than I thought he was going to be because he was awful at Auburn, right? So he's definitely fits the scheme up there, and he's looking like a Heisman Trophy winner. He's been a stud. That said, 9.4 is just too expensive. If I'm going to be up in that 9 range, I'm just going to pay for Stroud and move on. Cal does muddy the waters. That's what they do. They make things ugly. So he could have a 40-point game again, but he could also have a 22 and they blow him out and you just don't see a ton, right? If he's not going to get 60 on the ground and 2 scores, I'm not paying for it. So I'm probably going to fade Bo.
Yeah, I guess you could play him in cash because he's been lights out. Okay, he's been lights out. I'm going to give some respect to Bo. I do think that this Oregon team is absolutely cooking with gas right now. Okay, they're cooking with gas. The Kenny Dillingham offensive coordinator hire, I didn't know what to think about it at first. It's a home run. This guy's going to get hired away. He's going to get a head coaching gig, probably somewhere bigger than Arizona State. I think there's going to be a lot of coaches on the chopping block. Got a lot of teams moving conferences that aren't doing so well. So I could definitely see someone throwing a huge bag at Kenny Dillingham. I think he's gone after this year. I think he's 31 years old. I mean, it's just insane the success they're having. They're cooking with gas, and they're playing a defense that ranks outside the top 100 in success rate. So I do think they muddy things up, but I'll give some respect to this offense. I just think the prices are too high. Troy Franklin is clearly his wide receiver 1, had a huge blow-up game last week. He could blow up at any time. Okay, he likes throwing to him in the red zone. He likes throwing to him deep downfield. He likes throwing to him at all. The issue is, of course, the volume in the passing game. He hasn't topped 30 pass attempts. He's done it once in his last 5 games. And of course, the last 3 weeks, they played some absolutely pitiful defenses, UCLA, Arizona, and Stanford. And you'll say, okay, well, what's the difference between this pitiful defense and Cal's pitiful defense? Cal actually, Justin Wilcox, he's actually a very good defensive head coach, right? In a big game against Oregon, a home game, you could see them actually muddying things up like they haven't really been able to do at points this season. As far as the running game goes, they're just giving too many guys carries. Bucky Irving is very, very fun to watch. Watch this kid if you haven't. He's only at 5.7K in a good matchup against a Cal defense that ranks 112th in rushing success rate, 111th in rushing defense per PFF. That's really bad. Bucky Irving's really good. They have a really good veteran offensive line. They're going to do some damage here against a defensive front that ranks 110th in stuff rate and 110th in havoc. Woof. But yeah, they do split the carries, so it's hard to love them. I would say tournaments only. No Whittington at 4K if you need a pay down option. Seems like the secondary guy. All right, Kevin, tell me about the Cal stack as the run back.
I won't give you a stack, but I will give you a receiver to play. The freshman Sturdivant, 20 catches in his last 3 games with 3 touchdowns. He's getting a lot of targets. 5.2. They're should be in a trail position, so he should see a bunch of targets again. I don't necessarily think it's a stack with Plummer, but I think you can play him alone for his price.
Yeah, I think that I think Sturdivant's a play for me probably only if Jeremiah Hunter is out. They haven't really updated their notes in DraftKings, which I always like as getting an edge for people who only check the notes. So Jeremiah Hunter, it's been him and Sturdivant as the top 2 wide receivers. And then Sturdivant went out during the Colorado game. And of course, Hunter's just been an absolute target hog. I think it's 25 targets in the last 2 games, had 33 fantasy points against Washington. Washington's defense is absolutely terrible. Oregon's defense is actually pretty good. They're very good against the rush, which is what Cal really wants to do. Okay. And I think Oregon's secondary, I think they've gotten a lot better since the beginning of the year. I don't think it's a good secondary, but certainly not a bad one. I think the guys out wide are going to cover him decently. That being said, if Hunter's out and this team's playing from behind and, I think he's a pretty good player, I think Sturdivant is definitely fine at 5.2K. All right, let's turn our attention to Oklahoma State, Kansas State. This is going to be a tricky one because Oklahoma State, it's always fantasy gold mine, but they're playing a Kansas State defense that just has really kind of figured this thing out in the Big 12. This should be a very fun game to watch. Definitely one you should be watching. All the Big 12 games are worth watching, Kevin, because it's absolute chaos. But this 1.5 point spread in favor of Kansas State, who we'll talk about their quarterback situation later. But they played 3 last week. That's never ideal. Over under this one's only 56 for a Big 12 game. I thought the Big 12 was back, Kevin. 56.
Yeah, I figured it'd be low 60s, but it's a little lower than I thought. So obviously Spencer Sanders, everybody's been saying he's been banged up the past 2 weeks. Doesn't look banged up to me. He's been really good. So I think he's certainly in play. He's a guy, so that's why you can't play for a guy like Stetson Bennett. So Stetson Bennett's 8.4, Spencer Sanders is 8.3. You tell me who you want to play. The interesting thing with everyone else on Oklahoma State is they're all banged up. So Dominic Richardson's banged up at running back. Braden Johnson, Jaden Bray, who's never healthy. He's a turd, but anyway, they're all banged up at receiver. So, who do you play with Spencer, right? The guy, it just obviously depends on the other wide receivers, but the guy might be another 3K option that we're looking at is Stephon Johnson at 3K. He had a good week last week and, looked pretty good. I watched that game. It looked pretty good. But we just have to see, injury wise, if the other guys aren't playing. I don't expect Bray to play. I don't think he has much heart, but that's just me.
Wow. Not a Jaden Bray fan.
Not at all.
He has a lot of fans in this industry. I'd be careful.
He does. I know he does.
Has a lot of fans, a lot of rabid fans.
Yep.
Yeah. Mike Gundy said he's not giving injury updates anymore. I think it's just because so many key players have been injured because he was giving good ones early in this season. He flat out said he's just stopped doing that about 2 weeks ago. So I kind of stopped even checking because I haven't seen anything good. So don't expect any good nuggets out of me because I've tried checking. Haven't found anything. I think if Braden Johnson is out, and Jaden Bray is out, which at this point I kind of expect, I think maybe either one could return. It's hard to say. Bray's been in and out, as has Braden Johnson. They've been out, come back, and then went out again, both of them. Bray multiple times. So Stephon Johnson at 3K. I think if you're in cash, you're probably playing Samuel Brown as your punt option. And if you're in tournaments, you're probably playing Stephon Johnson, right? I just think he has a little bit more upside in this passing offense. The running back room, Richardson's banged up, and they just haven't been giving him the ball. They've been throwing the ball, 40-something times a game, operating at a fast pace. And when they do run, Spencer Sanders is probably running it, probably getting rushing touchdowns as well. So I think they're fine. It's really hard for me to play them. I think Kansas State's defense is genuinely very good, but yeah. Okay. Kansas State, it's hard to say what's going on because Adrian Martinez, nobody really seems exactly know what happened to him last week. He started playing the game, and then all of a sudden he wasn't playing the game after the first drive. And even the beat writers were like, well, he must have gotten hurt. Didn't see it happen. Nobody saw it happen. I don't know what happened. If you do, let us know. Deuce Vaughn is still banged up, the running back. So everyone's banged up in this game. Okay, so I guess you got to watch this one and just be in a very safe place. Don't leave your couch. You might get injured watching this game. But Deuce Vaughn is 7K, and he's one of the best running backs in college football. Of course, you're not playing their wide receivers. So I guess what it comes down to, Kevin, is are you playing Deuce Vaughn?
I probably have a little bit of exposure, not a ton though. Kansas State just, I don't know. They're ugly. They're just ugly, right? And last week was brutal because Adrian Martinez, he got me for 4 years in Lincoln, and he got me again last week. Had a lot of Martinez, and then what's going on? So I'm a little bitter with K-State right now.
Do we believe this quote? Kansas State offensive coordinator Colin Klein said Thursday that Vaughn is looking his healthiest in weeks and will play Saturday against Oklahoma State. After getting 12 carries in a close game where they're on the third string quarterback and he had a long breakaway run where he was looking hobbled, was limping into the end zone, where I'm rooting for him for my fantasy points. And I'm like, why did I play a cripple? Are we believing Colin Klein? What's the BS meter at here, 1 through 10?
Yeah, I don't believe anybody anymore when they talk because it's just this year is complete BS. This year seems worse than any year. I do think Deuce, I think he has heart. I think he plays through pain. But if he's banged up, and he's hobbling around, it's a high price to pay.
Listen, I still think you can play him. I'm not sure, like, if Rock gets the same price, right? It's hard for me to do that. I still think you can play Deuce Vaughn, okay? They're playing Oklahoma State, who always gets into shootouts. He's an elite player. He gets receptions, yada, yada. It's Deuce Vaughn. I think he is tough. I think he is going to gut it out. Deuce Vaughn, I mean, go to war with Deuce Vaughn, baby. Let's go. And it'd be perfect to go to war with him because you could, like, see over him. You could see where he's going. It'd be perfect. Anyway, him and Dalton Kincaid. I want them on my team as I'm going into battle, okay? Him and Dalton Kincaid. I get them. You get the rest of the country. We'll take you on. We'll win this. That being said, it's clear gamesmanship. He's not healthy. The whole country knows it. You're on your third string quarterback, possibly. You're just trying to, like Colin Klein's new to this. He's trying to play mind games. Oh no, he's super healthy. Yeah, it's quite see-through in my opinion. Just because it's see-through doesn't mean he still couldn't get 20 carries and have a good game. Because again, Spencer Sanders is also not healthy for the last 2 weeks and still getting 31 fantasy points. So who knows? Okay, moving on. We have Wake, Louisville. Kevin, Wake, fantasy points. It's usually a good time. Louisville's pass defense, I have bad memories from them when they played Florida State and Jordan Travis got hurt. And I said, okay, well, Florida State's screwed now. And then Tate Rodemaker is hucking the ball all over Louisville. But other than that, they haven't really been that bad this year. They actually played a very slow tempo, Louisville. Their games, despite having some very fun athletes to watch, have somehow always seemed to get ugly. It's just kind of the Satterfield way. They always get close and ugly. That being said, Wake, they still have good prices, and they're going to average over 40 points, well, it seems like for an eternity. So where are we looking at Wake?
I mean, obviously, Hartman, he's an elite play. He's always high eights. But again, he threw 5 touchdowns last week. He always has 5-6 touchdown upside because he runs a little bit too. So not a bad play at all. If you're gonna play him, I'm probably stacking him with A.T. Perry for an expensive stack, but I know he throws to different guys and he spreads it around, but A.T. Perry is clearly their best receiver, and I just think down the stretch he may, he's gonna show out a bit.
Their receivers are harder to trust than it would seem like, Kevin, for the fact that they run at a fast tempo and they have very good receivers. And I mean, it's quite clearly the best part of their team. And they have like a 5th-year quarterback who is amazing. But they always find a way to make their wide receiver rooms weird. Like Jakari Roberson was the smash play last year until he wasn't. A.T. Perry's the smash play, and he's been fine. He's been good to me at points. So it's the same thing as always. I'm not sure I'm going to play Hartman this week, but I said that last week and felt bad about it, or the last time he was on Slate, because he destroyed, I think it was Boston College, destroyed them. They're always fine. They're always fine. Okay, if Tate Rodemaker can throw on you, Sam Hartman can throw on you, right? Right. Sometimes it's that simple. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about the wide receivers. Okay. They're going against the Louisville pass defense. That's 108th in coverage per PFF. That's really bad. They've been inconsistent, just like everything about a Scott Satterfield team. It's just very inconsistent. You don't know what you're going to get. Donovan Green, okay, at wide receiver. He had 11 targets last week, but didn't do anything with them. Jamal Banks is back in the picture, okay, the very impressive young kid. He went off. He had 79 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he either gets 2 touchdowns or does nothing, okay, pretty much. So he's either going to get you over 20 fantasy points, or he might even get you a goose egg. You don't know it's Jamal Banks. You don't know if they're going to play him. Nobody does. So good luck. But, just throw him in a hat and take a guess. Okay, the last 3 weeks, here's the targets. Perry, 20. Donovan Green, 17, and Jamal Banks, 14. The issue with these being the top 3 guys is that they're all 3 outside wide receivers. So they have started putting the other guys in the slot a little bit more. Okay, they played Banks in the slot 23% last week, and then Green in the slot 16%, and that's at the behest of Taylor Morin. Okay, he's receiving less snaps than either 3 of these guys, and then Keyshawn Williams. They have 5 good receivers. Like these are 5 good receivers. Okay, don't get me wrong. But then Keyshawn's getting even less snaps than those 3. So all in all, they're all playing about the same amount. Okay, Banks and Green are playing about the same amount, and then A.T. Perry is still playing the most. He's still getting targeted the most. He's still the best receiver. He's still the best red zone threat. So at 7K, he's the top option overall. I think the pricing is correct. All right, on the flip side. Oh, and we don't play Wake Forest running backs on this podcast, right, Kevin?
Correct.
Okay. Louisville. I think there's one clear option here. What do we think about Malik Cunningham?
I don't know. I don't play him a lot. He obviously has huge upside, but then you look at last week and he had a stinker. I know he's bagged up a bit, right? He's not totally healthy. I don't know. I'm probably not going to have any Louisville guys. I'm not feeling it.
He did not look healthy at all last week.
Yeah. So I can't pay that kind of price for him.
Overall, I don't think I'm getting a ton of Malik. I think this is a week. I think I told you this, Kevin, right? I think I'm going to play more lineups than usual. There's just a lot of uncertainty. Okay, we don't know if Malik's healthy. I don't think he is, but they're playing at home against a Wake team that likes to get in shootouts. For some reason, the metrics like Wake Forest's defense, and I have no idea what's going on there. Okay, they've just been routinely getting torched for years now. PFF has them 9th in rush defense and 27th in coverage. 27th in coverage for Wake. What the heck? But even then, like, they've been solid. 38th in rushing success rate, 56 in passing success rate. Not great, but not terrible. Overall, I think Cunningham has 45-point upside in this matchup. So, of course, if I'm playing multiple lineups, I'm getting in there. The news on Tyon Evans, I saw that they expect him to play. I haven't seen that news reported by DraftKings, so I guess that could be leverage. I'm probably not playing him anyway because they're going to split the carries between him and Trevion Cooley. Trevion Cooley is priced down all the way at min price. I don't know why he is, Kevin. I think if Tyon Evans is out, which again, I don't expect, but it's not for sure. The head beat writer said he should be back. Trevion Cooley at min price is right up there with the other guys, I would think.
Yeah.
All right, Illinois, Nebraska. Nebraska money line underdog. What do we think, Nebraska fan?
I think it's probably going to be a close game. I think they certainly have a chance of keeping it close. Who knows what'll happen, but I think Chase Brown obviously should have a pretty big game. I think he's leading rusher in all of college football. Gets ton of usage, and actually he's a much better receiver than I thought he was. He's had some really good receiving games, so he's kind of the total package, and I don't see how Nebraska is really going to stop him. He is their offense, so I think he's a fine play. I think he's a great play in cash, for sure, and I think he's a good tournament play too. So it's just I think he's worth the pay up if you want to go that route.
Some news on the Thursday slate. If you're watching live, we knew Tavion Thomas, Utah running back, wasn't going to play, but Micah Bernard also not expected to play. Okay, so Jalen Glover, 4.3K, one of my favorite true freshman running backs in the country, is worth a pivot if you want to get a nice cheap, possibly even a leverage play, although everyone's probably going to get that news. But Chase Brown, I love watching Chase Brown play football. I'm glad you said that about him. He is a good receiver. He is very elusive. He is a power back. He's the complete package. I like Chase Brown. He's the only person, well, not the only person we could consider, because Josh McCray, I think he had the most rushing yards for a freshman in Illinois history last year. Could be wrong about that, but did have 549 yards and 112 carries a year ago. This is someone they want to get involved. Had 8 carries in the opener against Wyoming, but did get hurt. He's big. He's a power back. He's playing in a Nebraska rush defense that is among the worst in the entire country. A 106th in rushing EPA. 121st in rushing success rate. That's really bad. Illinois has one of the best offensive lines in the country, and we know they're going to run the ball first, run the ball second, run the ball third. They might even run the ball on fourth if they don't punt. So, yeah, I like both those guys. Chase Brown should be priced at what, 9.5K, you think, Kevin?
Yeah, he should be much higher than what he is.
Yeah, so
absolutely.
Pretty, like, if you're playing cash and not playing Chase Brown, find a new hobby probably. Okay. Yeah. Looking at Nebraska, any run backs? Illinois' defense has been fantastic.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to get there. I think Trey Palmer, coming off a monster game against Purdue, he's 7.6. I think he's going to be actually pretty popular because of that game, but I'm not playing him against Illinois. It's just not saying he can't have a decent game. He could certainly have 5 for 90 and a touch, but I don't see a blow up, and I think I'm going to actually stay away.
Yeah, I mean, he has elite usage and he has elite speed, and he plays in a Mark Whipple offense as a slot receiver. So I'm never going to tell you not to play Trey Palmer. Am I playing Trey Palmer this week? Not a lot. Okay. Illinois' defense, 2nd in passing EPA, 4th in passing success rate. Those are not numbers I can look away from, and they've limited explosiveness as well. So that's hard for me to say here in a game where Illinois is probably going to just bleed out the clock, right? They're probably going to limit possessions.
Yep.
I don't see why they would not. So tough for me to get there, but I think that's a place I would look. Definitely no Anthony Grant for me against a good defense. All right, one of the games of the weekend. I do not mean that in jest. Cincinnati going to the bounce house for American supremacy that sounds a bit dramatic. For American Athletic Conference supremacy, this is going to be a good one, Kevin. Bounce house is going to be bouncing because it
Yeah.
always is. The line is UCF -1.5. Totals at 56.5. Supposed to be back and forth. Where should we start? CINCY or UCF? Who are we more interested in?
I'm probably more interested in UCF just because they had I think they're going to have a bounce back from last week, or they looked awful against
Bounce back at the bounce house.
Yeah, against ECU. They were brutal. Plumlee was just god awful. Four turnovers, looked lost out there. Ryan O'Keefe was on a milk carton. Where the hell was he? What was going on? He just wasn't there. I don't understand. He had 2-3 games in a row where he was the lead dog, and last week he disappeared. So all that said, I expect them to bounce back a little bit against obviously a decent Cincinnati D, as they always are. But the line, I don't know. The line's a little funky for me. The line's telling me something. I think UCF is going to get the win at home. So, you could have some Plumlee interest, and I think O'Keefe bounces back. But overall, I'm not enamored with anyone in this game. I think it's going to be a great game to watch from a college football aspect. But from a fantasy aspect, I'm not overly interested.
I completely agree. I think you said it well. I think if I'm playing this, I would play UCF. I think Cincinnati, I hesitate to say this with teams that I think are genuinely really well coached. Like I think Luke Fickell is with Cincinnati. I really believe in this program wholeheartedly. I just think Cincinnati's just overvalued this season. They're 1-5. I think it's 1-5-1 ATS on the season. Okay. And for a team that's been winning to not cover any spreads, that's a bit alarming. I think their defense is overrated. I mean, everyone's gonna, all the spreadsheet bros, and I guess I'm a spreadsheet bro because I'm literally staring one right now, Kevin. But they're gonna rate out as a top 10 defense on all the spreadsheet bros stuff. I don't think they're a top 10 defense. They played some terrible teams. I think UCF's going to be able to run the ball on this one, and UCF needs to run the ball to have success. I think ECU has a better rush defense than Cincinnati does. I think ECU actually has a very solid defense, right? We've seen them play very well. We saw it in the opener against NC State. We've seen it all year long. Cincinnati, we've seen them play some scrubs and look pretty good. I think the pass defense is exploitable. Sounds like Javon Baker's really banged up. I think he's going to play in this one. Definitely not playing him at 6'4". I'm definitely not playing any of these receivers, right? But Kobe Hudson, the Auburn transfer, if I'm going to play one, he's the cheapest. And I know he was banged up early in the year, but he's had double-digit fantasy points and one blow-up spot. So if you're saying, well, I don't expect a blow-up spot against Cincinnati, I don't know. They could do it, right? All right. Cincinnati, nothing for me. Nothing for me. What are you going to go back to McClelland?
I liked him last week. He had a good game. I will not, because of his game was actually a little bit not really what it looked like, right? So if you take away his 76-yard run, he didn't do anything. And I don't know that he's going to bust a 76-yard run against UCF. And Corey Kiner got plenty of carries, so I'm not on McClelland this week. No.
Yeah, I felt good about not playing McClelland last week until that touchdown run. Oof. Yeah, Corey Kiner is going to be involved. They're going to split the usage. I don't think UCF's defense is great. Like people that follow the American closely, are pretty high on UCF. So I don't know if just everyone's a UCF fan or what, this defense, but they played some competent offenses this year. And I'm being generous calling Georgia Tech a competent offense, but Georgia Tech, ECU, SMU, and Louisville. All four of those teams had over 425 total yards against UCF. So every time they've played a team with a pulse, they've given up 425 yards. I think Cincinnati has a pulse. I think they're going to move the ball, but you're going to have two running backs split the usage. You're going to have a pocket passer in Ben Bryant, who's wholly uninteresting here on the road. You're going to have a banged up Tyler Scott as the top wide receiver, who I think is being overrated. He's really fast. Okay. Yeah. But he was in a walking boot last week. Even if he does come back, I'm not really interested in any of the options here. So that just overall makes for a very unappealing fantasy play on Cincinnati's team. All right, overall, Kevin, we did it. We made it to the end. Thanks everyone for rocking with us here on a Thursday night. Now we got some games we're gonna watch. Me and Kevin are both excited for the Utah-Washington State game. It's gonna be cold, baby. We might see some weird things. Washington State playing at home in Pullman is always something you want to see, especially on a Thursday night. It's gonna be good. Stay up for that one. But before we let people watch this 3-game slate, any final thoughts on the slate?
I think this slate is finding that value because there's not a ton of it. So if you hit that value right, I think that's what's going to make it. It's just finding that value. There's a couple guys like we identified. So that's where I think you need to go if you want to afford the higher price guys. If you don't, you can go middle of the road lineup, and certainly make it work with say a Schrader and a Deckers at quarterback and super flex. You certainly can do that. But if you want to pay up for a Stroud or a Bo Nix, you're going to have to find some of that value.
The thing is, you can do both this week. Like, I'm equally confident right now on a Thursday before or the other news drops. I made a lineup with Schrader and Deckers, okay, where I paid way up at wide receiver and had some decent money left over at running back, right? I could play like a Tank or a TJ or a Rocket, right? And pay all the way up for like a Hutchinson and a Quentin Johnston and a Buka and a whoever. You can kind of play those guys. So you can either do that with the cheap quarterbacks. You can even play the cheap quarterbacks and you can play one of those min price guys and pay way up everywhere else. You can play your Chase Brown still, right? There's so many different ways you can go on the slate. I'm still outside of which one I like best. I think overall the lesson for me is probably play multiple lineups this week. Play one where you go up at quarterback, right? Play one where you afford the Chase Browns, because 7.5K, if you can't afford a 7.5K Chase Brown, like something is whispering in my ear, like, what are you doing paying up? So, especially in cash, like it's just really easy. Okay. So, all right, let's go watch some football, Kevin.
Amen. Awesome.
All right. Thank you guys for rocking with us as always. We'll be back next week, week 10. Other than that, enjoy your Thursdays, or if you're listening to this on a Friday, Saturday morning, enjoy your weekend, and we will see you next week.